Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the south-afrifur podcast. You're listening to myself, Ivic Wolf, and my co-host, Scratch.
As always.
And our guest for this evening is Mark Engels, the author of Always Grey in Winter.
Hello, Ivic. Hello, Scratch. Thank you for having me. Good evening, everyone.
All right. So, geez, are we going to move straight into this, or maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself first?
Okay, sure. I was born and raised in Michigan, in the United States. My interests in trains and electronics at an early age resulted in a career designing and commissioning railroad and rail transit signal systems across the United States and Canada. I indulged my writing desire by authoring articles first for rail and rail transit industry magazines, but coupled with my longtime membership in numerous anime, manga, and anthropomorphic fandoms, I took up writing genre fiction. I've lived also in Indiana and Minnesota in the United States, never far from my beloved Great Lakes. Today, my wife and I make our home in Wisconsin with our son and a dog who naps beside me as I write. I am a member of the Allied Authors of Wisconsin, one of the state's oldest writing collectives, and more recently joined the Furry Writers Guild.
All right.
A number of their members are listening tonight. Hey, everybody. Glad to have you. And look forward to meeting more of them and your listeners through our podcast here.
Awesome. So, just as a question, I mean, obviously you've got a couple of interviews sort of lined up, but are we the first one on your list?
Oh, no. I already had one of them on Friday evening, and also another text-based one that just posted yesterday. And then I've got another text one that probably later when I get off the phone with you guys, I will get back to putting some more detail down for that. So I intend to be making the rounds.
Yeah. Yeah, weirdly enough, I mean, obviously we haven't necessarily spoken to a first-time author before. Have we, Doge? Scratch? Damn it.
Yeah,
Scratch?
I don't think we do.
First-time authors?
Yeah, first-time authors not so much, to be honest. Oh, no, wait, well, Advolf?
Advolf, of course, yes. But, I mean, yeah, no, definitely Advolf. What am I talking about? But one of the questions that I don't think we actually spoke to Advolf about, one of the things that I actually want to do ask is, when it comes to sort of it being your first book and everything like that, and I mean, you're a person who's been, I think, doing a large amount of this kind of plugging and everything like that. So one of the questions is that, how does that normally feel? To actually be having to do that all the time. I mean, I know for me, I'm a very, I guess, insular person. I like talking to very specific groups of people a lot of the time because I get scared of larger groups and sort of saying, oh no, I'm good at this thing. How does that actually feel to be able to do that? Kind of sitting there going like, I have a book, I have written this thing, we are going to be doing all of these things. How does that feel?
Well, I suppose that for many first-time authors, it's something of a necessity, simply because who's this guy and what's this book? And there might be a million other books published around the world this year. What makes this one special? How do we find their audience? And I think that I've met a number of folks who say that they're introverted, and I appreciate where they're coming from. I think that they understand that this is par for the course, because I'm unknown, the book's unknown. I have to find its audience. And I'm glad with the help I've gotten from my publisher, Thurston Howell Publications, that we're in the process of finding that audience. And I appreciate a program like yours because I think it's helpful for me to make new friends, connect with an audience that I might not have otherwise connected with. And for me, it just seemed a necessary thing to do. I have been told, especially being that I make my living as an engineer, that I'm an extroverted engineer. I look at the other person's feet while I'm talking to them. But for me, public speaking and presenting has never presented a problem like it does for some, and so I'm glad to have an opportunity to do this. I think one trick that first-time authors have, and any author has, is at the risk of casting pearls before swine, I might say, to figure out where that receptive audience is going to be and how best to reach out, which is part of the reason I'm here with you guys, because I think that you're right in the place within the furry community that I really wanted to speak to. So thank you for the opportunity.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the book that you're writing, Always Grey in Winter.
Okay, that I have written. That came out last Thursday is when it went on sale, and people can check out my website. I think will be on your screen there, or at some point they can go. An Amazon buy link is there, but this is the first a paranormal sci-fi thriller. First in a werecat family saga series about the modern-day remnant of an ancient clan of werecats torn apart by militaries on 3 continents vying to exploit their deadly talents. Born in an ethnic Chicago neighborhood following her family's escape from Cold War-era Poland, Werelynx Paulie flees underground to protect her loved ones after genetically enhanced soldiers, led by rogue scientists and rival werecat Morrow, overrun her Navy unit in the Gulf of Oman. Paulie's family seeks her out in a desperate gambit to return their ancestral homeland and reconcile with their estranged kinsmen. But when her human lover arrives to thwart Morrow's plan to weaponize their pharaoh bloodlust, Paulie faces a daunting choice: preserve her family's secrets and risk her lover's life, or chance her true nature driving him away forever.
Fascinating.
Okay, very interesting. So when it comes to your characterization and the characters that you've placed in there, the people that you've sort of come up with for that kind of story, how exactly did you sort of think about their characters? Did you read a lot? Did you what was your process?
Oh, I came at this probably in the most backward way that anyone could come into this. I had been a writer for some while in several anime and manga fandoms, writing fan fiction for those, but I only did it very rarely. If I thought that the creators had left part of the story untold, and it really bothered me that they did so, that's the point at which I would sit down and start writing. I really had no plan to write this book. I really had no motivation to write this book or the books that are going to follow until one evening working on a job site in the Washington, D.C. area, where I was visited upon one of my characters with claws and fangs and just started shredding away at the inside of my subconscious.
Oh, wow.
without even being so considerate as to give me her name. Well, I found out it was Paul, jerk, and that's kind of where this began. I ignored her, and she just wouldn't take no for an answer. And if you see from the pictures on my website, she's got claws, she's got fangs, she can be very persuasive. And so that's how I set about. So from there, once I had the idea, okay, this is the character I'm going to write about. Well, who's around her? Who's her family? Does she have a love interest? Does she not have a love interest? How are they interrelated? Are they're going to be werecats? Does the society know about them? Do they not know about them? What would drive conflict between these characters and make it interesting for a reader to want to learn about? So I sat down for the remainder of that engagement when I had slack moments on the job site, or I was whiling away the hours at the hotel. I came up with a outline for the entire series and sent it around to a couple of trusted friends, several of whom I know are listening for. Thank you. They've been with me a long time, and the feedback I got from them was, please don't make this one book, or it's going to rival Tolstoy's War and Peace and be full as a doorstop and probably not much else because no one would read it. So that's where I got the idea of splitting this up into several books, and my current plan calls for 3, maybe a 4th, depending on how much I decide to exposit in the 3rd book, to make sure that it fits within genre word count guidelines. And so with the outline in hand, I set about to writing the first book. Did character sheets for several of the main characters, which turned out to be very helpful when I solicited artists, like you see on my website, commissioned artists to do their character turnaround, their reference sheets. I could say, here's all this character's physical, mental, emotional characteristics, and so I'd start from the as an engineer, I kind of am a plotter by default. I start with the highest level outline. Says in the series, this series that goes back 40 years covers 3 generations of Paulie's family from the height of the Cold War to today. This is where we're going, but how are we going to get? What characters are going to be involved in these different parts of the story? Who's going to know what? And who's going to know what when? That's always the thing that I find most interesting, the thing I find most challenging, because I think that that's really going to drive the conflict. That's really going to establish the character's motivations. So those are the things that I use to go from the higher level concept to the finished book. To make sure that I'm telling the right story at the right time, featuring the right character, representing them in the most authentic and relatable way.
Okay.
Awesome.
So here's an interesting question, and it kind of links to the question that I asked just before this. Do you think that a big ego helps or hurts writers?
Well, I think I came to the business of my day job as a tradesman.
Yeah.
And I have several bags full of tools. All of those tools have an intended purpose. All of those tools have jobs that they're good for. All of those tools have jobs they're not so good for. All of those tools can be used in good ways, and all of those tools can be used in not so. And I think the same is true of a writer and their ego, because I think that a writer ought to have some ego, because what makes me so sure that these thoughts swirling around in my head could form a cogent story that anyone else would be interested in? So I think for me, I wrote the story that was in my heart to tell, and I figured that I had enough ego to believe that other people might feel the same.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't have to go too far down the list on a Google search to encounter a whole lot of writers, a whole lot of authors who have a pretty high opinion of themselves and have no compunction whatsoever sharing. So I think a writer's ego is like any tool. It should be. It takes wisdom and discernment and practice and experience to figure out how to use it, and use it in a manner that's going to benefit them and benefit their readers and benefit the writing and reading community at large.
That is an incredibly cogent answer.
Thank you. Thank you. I set precedent now. I don't know if I can keep this pace up. I'll do my best.
Yeah, no worries. Scratch, do you have a question that you might want to
ask? It's not often that I hear people sort of have characters come out of them as fully formed like that. Do you think that's sort of, maybe I'm just out of the loop, do you think that's unique among fantasy writers, that they have like a character that immediately has sort of all their features laid out to them or laid bare in this, like you said, this visitation? Or do you think it's more of they take sort of a world first approach and then the characters built into that? Which one do you think is more common?
Well, for their sake, I hope they don't have female werecats visiting upon them and tearing away at the inside of their head for their own sanity. But I think it. Oh, geez, who knows? Inspiration comes from so many different sources. For me, it was a character showed up and said, "I have a story. Tell it."
Okay.
Sounds very useless.
Some of it she inferred, and some of it she let me figure out on my own, and some of it she said, "No, it's like this." Other people don't have a similar experience. They just have a general. They have a place. They have a time. They have something they wish to share with their reader. So they start from a different perspective. Some people have a world and just want characters to fill it. I had a character and had to build a world around her.
Mm.
Okay.
It's as I was saying just a little bit earlier, that sounds sort of very muse-esque in and of itself. But I mean, normally a muse or a writer's muse is a person who helps the writing process in and of itself. When it came to this kind of story and the formation of the world around that character, like, what exactly is it that was, I don't know, I guess, said to you? How, I mean, besides, look, and please just, I'm going to say this is that I'm joking, but I mean, it sounds almost schizophrenic in a sort of weird way. But then again, what writers aren't? Yakumalan, I'm looking at you.
And Jacob Milan's written a great book, by the way. I read it and I loved it. And my review is up on Amazon. Hi, Jacob. So you're asking if I think that this schizophrenia is common, or
Well, I'm kind of like thinking, like, how exactly did that sort of come about? I mean, I know that you said that it sort of visited you while you were in Washington, D.C., but how was it something that was just in the back of your mind, or was it something that sort of thrust itself forward?
Well, it was something. It was almost like a chronic ache. It was the itch that you couldn't scratch.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm not talking to you.
I know, this happens a lot.
But it was the idea that here was an idea, and I mean, all of us have ideas. Writers have ideas. Non-writers have lots of ideas and are very happy to tell writers, "Hey, you should write my idea." No, I got plenty of my own things.
Mm-hmm.
Come and go, and they come and go, and they come and go, and they come and go, and many of them are throwaway, disposable ideas. Oh yeah, that'd be nice, and 2 minutes later, you're even that long, you're thinking of something else.
Mm.
This one just would not go away. This because I'm thinking, I don't have time for this. I don't have time to figure out how to do this. I'm not even particularly, it's like, no. I did my best to try to ignore it and carry on, but it became clear to me that this idea wasn't going to go away. And I did not want to lay myself down to die with the regret that if only I had ... I'm going to have enough of those as it is. I don't need this one on top of those. So I said to myself, we're going to do something about this, and we did. And now I'm about 2/3 of the way through drafting my second book, and I'm hoping that this momentum will carry me through till the end of the series, because I don't intend to stop until I've accomplished what I set out to do, which is tell the story that's laid out in this great big series outline that I told you about. That's the bare minimum that I need to do before I'll feel like I've finished what I set out to do.
Okay. Adolf mentions that it's a lot like having a crush on someone, where the person starts living in your mind. Sometimes Yes. I agree with him completely. Some have. I have used the term in several other discussions, other interviews, of obsession.
Mm-hmm.
It's something even now, and this has gone on for 4 years now. It's what I think of. It's one thing I think about when I wake up in the morning. It's one of the last things I think about before I go to bed at night. And I'm thinking about it continually throughout the day. I've used the term you talk about. Well, where do you get your motivation? I don't know what to say aside from I can't not write this. I can't not tell this story. I can't not be motivated to share it with an audience that I think will enjoy it just as much as I do.
Mm.
And so here we are. And I my fellow writers will understand this. It's an obsession that's relentless, that simply won't be ignored.
Yeah.
And so this is what I have to do to it's kind of like the task you don't want to do, but the only way to make it go away is to just do it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I love doing what I'm doing, but trust me, there's many other things that are just sitting there hanging fire because this is taking up the time and energy necessary just to get it done.
Yeah. No, it's weird that you say it like that, because I mean I tend to write just a little bit of poetry every now and again, and there are days that I'd be sitting down and I'd be in such a foul mood, and I realize like almost immediately, wait, I need to put something to paper, and it would actually be like that as soon as it's done, as soon as it's over. There's like this weird sort of cathartic moment that kind of says, okay, cool, you've completed what you've set out to do. Now carry on with the rest of your day. But like in that kind of sense, I mean, you've set out like a whole bunch of books and things like that. Would you write beyond that about different characters, or do you think that this is the be all and end all of your writing career?
That's a very good question, and one that I really don't have a clear answer for either. I'm sorry. I've given this some thought, and I during the research that I did for writing this book, I read a lot of books about writing. I listened to a lot of webinars about writing. I read a lot of blogs, a lot of Twitter tweets by writers about writing, and many of them would say, hey, publishing is a rough gig. It's a long slog. Write the book, pitch the book. If no one's interested in the book, trunk the book or shelf the book and get on to the next one with a new bunch of characters and a new world. And I'm like, no. That's not why I do what I do. One of my Twitter writer friends says on her profile, I did not tell these stories to become a writer. I became a writer to tell these stories. And I agree with that completely, because but for these characters and this world and this storyline, I've got other things I could be doing. I wouldn't be writing at all. So what I've said to people who put the question to me, I don't know yet. We'll see. My fan fiction authoring was on and off for the better part of 15 years. When an idea hit me and wouldn't let me go, I wrote, and then I walked away from it and said, I'm never doing that again, until the next time an idea hit me and wouldn't let it go. So it's the very same thing again. I don't think I'm in a position right now to say, yes, I'm going to write more with different characters in different worlds. I won't rule it out, but I'm not promising anything, because unless and until it comes and hits me hard and won't let me go, I'm not signing up for it. because I gotta be consumed by it that much for me to go through all this nonsense, frankly.
Yeah.
Understandably.
Okay. Scratch? You have anything? Yeah.
Nothing really pops into my head right now.
I have a lot of questions.
Please go ahead. No, nothing's really popping into my head just yet. I'm just fascinated by this, by the sort of the journey and the mindset, because I find it interesting that there are people who usually think of writers as like career writers, and not people who like have this one story that they fervently want to tell. And that's I think unique in and of itself, and I find that fascinating.
Well, I think part of the reason is because when you read the blogs or you read the books, or they're by career authors, and God bless their pea-picking hearts. I'm glad that this is their passion. I'm glad that this is what they're doing, and for those who are able to make a living at it, good for them. I'm happy for you. But there's more to me than just this. Yeah, I'm a father. I'm a friend. I'm a husband. I'm a railroader. I'm an electrical engineer. I'm an anime and manga and anthropomorphic fan too, and have been for the last 30 years. I got other facets of my personality, other things I want to do aside from this that I don't think are any less important. But for the moment, they're off in the wings, waiting for their turn on stage. And I've told them, no, it's not your time yet, not your time yet, not your time yet. And I don't want to deny them longer than necessary. So I think the reason why this is a unique perspective that you're finding is that there's just not a lot of people who are out there saying these things who aren't career writers, or who do not aspire to be career writers.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, Dex does. Let me see here. So, for this series to become a success to you, what does that look like?
Well, first and foremost, sell a lot of books. Hey, everybody, the buy link's up. Thank you. So that's one thing. But I think for me, I will feel successful on the release day of the last book. I will feel like I have accomplished what I set out to do the day that the last book is released, whether that's book 3, whether that's book 4.
The day the story has been finally told.
Happens, exactly. What's in my control is to tell the story. Mm-hmm. What's not in my control is sales, or I have some influence over that, and I intend to exercise it. What's not over my influence to control is reviews. What's not under my influence to control is how well the book is received by its intended audience. Those aren't within my control. What's within my control is telling the story, and telling the story in the best way I think I can. Mm-hmm. And when the last book of the series is released, I'll rest easy saying, okay, it's out of my hands now. There's some things I can do. I'm always glad to talk to you and other members of my audience. I'm intending to continue to be present in the anime and the manga and the anthro fandoms and make new friends. But aside from that, it's out of my hands, and I'll accept whatever comes.
Okay. Considering that your main character is female, what's the most difficult thing about writing from her perspective?
Well, I think that one of the most insecure things for me is having a female main character is the constant nagging question in the back of my head. Am I writing her accurately? Am I representing her well? Is this simply, the Gary Stu male, or the Mary Sue Gary Stu wish fulfillment on my part, or is this a real young woman that young women who read my book and other women who read my book will say, yes, this is authentic representation. This is well done. I do what I can to make sure that I get it right by making sure that a number of my beta readers are women themselves. Mm-hmm. And there have been several times where they've pulled me aside in confidence via email or Twitter DM and said, whoa, wait, well, slow down. So no, that's not the view from here. That's not the way this works. and I'm very grateful for having had those opportunities, because I think it helps make the story more accessible, more authentic, a better experience for the reader overall. Because yes, I did write the book that was in my heart to tell, but I wanted to write it in such a way that it would be accessible and interesting and compelling to others as well. And getting the representation right about women especially was a very high priority for me. And I'll be interested to see what your readers, especially the women among them, think of that.
Hmm. That's interesting, yeah. So, gonna change a little bit of tack here. What did you edit out of this book?
Oh, lots. Lots. I think many writers have won their hard drives, or maybe for those that are still like writing on pads, and put in a file cabinet, a drawer perhaps, or a folder perhaps. I think everybody's got a what I call the bunny hutch, which is where all the plot bunnies go, because otherwise they'll run around and I don't feel like chasing them all over the place. And so I have a place called the bunny hutch where I put them in there and forget about them until I look through them and need them and maybe want to pick them out here and there. I think everyone's also got a file called cold storage. And cold storage, if you go back to, say, Stephen King's On Writing book, and he talks about killing your darlings.
Yeah.
I don't like to kill my darlings, but I do believe that there's sometimes I have to redshirt them. There's sometimes where you just have to say, no, this ain't gonna work. No. This is not the time. This is great writing. This is a great idea. This is a great writing. This is good. But this is not the time. This is not the place. So I put it out. I pull it out. I put it in cold storage. And every time I do that, I'm picturing Jessie from Toy Story, begging Woody and Bullseye not to go back into storage. Don't put me back into storage. I'm picturing that every time I put one of these things in there. But I think it's necessary for me accomplishing what I set out to do. There are a number of plot threads within my book that are all twisted together. There were more, and a number of my pre-readers said, no. This is too much. This is too much. Because I could keep these plot threads straight, but then you threw in this one. Something's got to give. And so some of those things, by necessity, had to come out. One, to keep the book at a manageable length, and number two, to keep the reader's engagement so their eyes didn't glaze over after the 8th or 9th plot thread twisted in there that is, you know what, I can't keep track of all this. There were a number of characters that got introduced at the beginning that I had to push them off. I either pushed them off later, or I just took them out of the story altogether. And there are still a number of characters that are introduced very quickly in the story, and I know that's going to cause an issue for some readers.
Yeah.
But I just had to accept that and say, this is these twisted plot threads were the kind of story I like to read, so I'm glad to put them in here, and I know full well that that's just not going to be for everyone. So a number of characters got shelved or red-shirted or put into cold storage. A number of plot lines got the same treatment, but I reserve the right to pull them back out along with the various plot bunnies during the execution of the next books.
Okay. And any thoughts of using some of those characters and plot threads left on the cutting room floor for another series, perhaps in the same universe, or would it be the sort of this series of books then one and done for that, or is that a future decision?
I'm just going to have to take that as it comes.
Yeah.
Because I may get done with the main series outline that covers 3 generations of Polly's family from the height of the Cold War until today, this Werecat clan, and say to myself, well, am I interested? Are people interested in what happened before? Of what had happened through history to come to this point in the Cold War where things started to really happen hot and heavy? Are there more stories to be told there that I'm interested in, and that other people may be interested in too? That's when some of these that's probably really when I'm going to almost you can liken it to the kid smashing open his piggy bank, right?
Yeah.
Coins running around. Okay, now's the time. Here we go, right? And that's probably going to be the time where I really delve into that and decide, okay, is it time to tell these stories, or is it time to do something else? So I don't know yet, but I will find out.
All right.
Okay. With that in mind, and sort of your historical background with, I guess, the Cold War and so on and so forth, the idea of Oman, did you ever go to Oman to just see what Oman is like, or did you have to rely on, like, first-hand reports and pictures and things like that to understand what Oman is all about?
Well, the first scene of the series of the book takes place in the Gulf of Oman, actually at a place called Chabahar, which is this tiny little port town near the Irani-Pakistan border. And I did not travel to that place. There are numerous places that I refer to in my book. At the risk of saying too much, I'll simply say I've never been to. There is an adage within writing that anyone who's been doing it for more than 2 weeks has heard "write what you know."
Yeah.
And I think that is sage wisdom, but I simply didn't have the budget to travel the world to see all these places and walk that.
Sorry.
Get that dirt between my toes. I simply didn't have the resources to do that. So I modified that approach somewhat to say, okay, I'm not going to write what I know per se, I've physically experienced, but I know people who've been there. I know people who I know that there are books written about those places. I know that there are people online who have been to those places and blog about them. I know. And libraries are always great for this. So I modified that approach somewhat to say, okay, don't write what you know, but write what you're willing to research, write what you're willing to investigate. Write what you're willing to commit yourself to an understanding to get right. And I'll be very interested to hear from my readers whether they think I've done that. And I'm not the first guy to have thought of this. Let us not forget that an insurance salesman from Ohio nearsighted and denied military service because of it, named Tom Clancy, never set foot on a Navy ship until the sub he got to tour before the movie Red October came out. But what did he do? He showed up at the library at the Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland, in the United States, and didn't leave. He asked questions. He bugged them. He read every book he could find. He made friends. He built contacts. He established relationships. He was a fixture there. It's part of the reason why the publishing department of the U.S. Naval Academy decided to publish his book in the first place. And, well, we know the rest of the story. So here was a guy who had never been a Navy sailor and never would be, who came to write one of the preeminent books, one on submariner fiction in history, only because it interested him and he was willing to commit himself to learn everything he could about it.
Okay, that's actually pretty interesting. Mog here mentions that write what you know is a little more figurative than literal, and also says that, like, when he writes a character, he or she, sorry, I'm not sure, their character is a combination of a lot of different people, for instance. Hopefully they'll be able to correct me as to whether they're male or female.
I do agree with that completely. Yeah. I do agree with that completely. That yes, and I don't think that that's a bad thing. In fact, I think that's probably a good thing, because when we put in that disclaimer, these are fictional events and fictional characters. Any resemblance to anyone living or dead is purely coincidental. Well, it's a good thing that we mash these different personalities together to make these characters who someone can't say is this guy or that gal, and next thing you know, you have attorneys sending you letters in the mail, and I have enough excitement in life. I don't need any more. I don't need any of those.
Yeah, rather not.
Huh. So, I mean, and that is actually pretty interesting. That kind of idea of, possibly getting, what's the word? Solicited for, not solicited, is it?
Yeah, I suppose.
Something along the lines of that.
Well, you have solicitors in South Africa, right? Barristers and solicitors.
Yeah. We do have a very, very strong law system here, so that's definitely a thing. So with the publishing of this book, do you think that it's changed your process of writing at all?
Not markedly. I don't think so, because I'm approaching the next book in much the same manner, going through my series outline, figuring out, okay, I know that these events have to happen and these characters are involved and this is what they know and this is what they don't know. And then with those points established, figuring out, well, how is this going to happen? I like that. I go through this on a book-by-book basis, on a chapter-by-chapter basis, on a scene-by-scene basis. Okay, this is where I'm starting, this is where I'm ending, but to me, when you're looking down at it from the 10,000-foot view, those are just points on a map. It tells you this is the direction I'm going. But you don't know until you get down to ground level what rivers you gotta ford, what cliffs you're gonna scale, what quicksand waits between how much brush you're going to have to hack your way through, kind of critters there might be that might want to lunch on you, right? You don't know any of that stuff until you get right into the thick of it. So for my process, I say yes, I'm a plotter, but I generally have a very high level view of where I'm going and how I actually get there is a very rough and tumble and reiterative process. And I don't see that changing. I don't see that changing for at least for the remainder of this series, because I've still got the outline to tell me this is the story you wanted to tell.
I had the question here. I keep highlighting them, and then I stop highlighting them. Do you think someone could be a writer if they don't feel emotions strongly?
I mean, I think anyone can be anything. Truthfully, are they going to be happy doing it? Are they going to? Are they going to be able to channel their energy in such a way as to make it worth their while, make it worthwhile for a future reader. I'll give you an example, like my day job. I'm a railroader. I love trains since I was a little boy. I work with a lot of people who don't. I work with a lot of people who are only in the business simply because, well, that's what their father did, or that's what their uncle did, or that's what their grandfather did, or they needed a job and the railroad was hiring. They don't care two whits about the whole thing. And some of them are very good at what they do. I think one of the advantages I think a writer has writing a book like I wrote is I'm telling the story to myself first. I'm a railroader. I'm out there doing what I do in large part because I love it. And oh look, I can make a living doing it. Isn't that great? Same thing for being a writer. I'm telling the story to myself first. I'm writing the book because this is the story that I looked around and wanted to read and couldn't find anyone else who'd written. So I guess I take that upon myself. And I believe it was a writer named Toni Morrison who had once said, whatever book is in your heart to read, you must read it. If that book hasn't been written yet, you must write it.
Yeah.
And so here I am. So I don't think that a writer. It's kind of like, you know, the old adage, you don't have to be crazy to work here, but it helps. Well, the same thing for being a writer. You don't have to have that passion to be a writer, but I think it really helped. I hope you find something else you're passionate about.
I don't think that the question is more about passion, but thank you for answering that. But I mean, like, in other words, emotional as in emotional connection, or emotional, or an ability to write emotionally, or sort of the idea of possibly feeling almost dead inside while you're writing, that kind of thing. I mean, we all have passions, which is great, and I mean, it's not like whether I feel emotionally or not is going to affect whether I'm going to write a poem, for instance. Like, that's more the question that I think that is being led to. You know, I mean, do you have the kind of connection with your character would be a question. I mean, your characters could be character, but you could feel almost nothing for them while writing them. But, like, do you think that it's better to have that sort of emotional connection with them?
Well, I think so, simply because I think that it's part and parcel of writing the character in an authentic manner and really depicting them in a way that's going to captivate the reader and invoke emotions within them. There were parts of my book that as I wrote them, I was in tears. I was crying. There is some, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but there several of the characters endure some harsh realm with things that happen to loved ones, and I wanted to convey that. I felt very strongly about conveying, because I think that unless I had scenarios and situations where I could convey that, then these characters weren't as real as I wanted them to be. These characters weren't as relatable as I had wanted. And I think I would not have served them well. I don't think I would have served my readers well had I not been able to have experiences like that.
Fair point.
Okay. No, that's definitely, I think that's a good answer, yes. If you could tell your younger writing self anything, what would it be? Like right at the beginning when you were sort of getting hit by that muse of yours, for instance. Like now, having published your first book, what would you tell the person who is writing?
That the book in your heart to write is not necessarily the book that any one reader wants to read. That is probably the thing that I stumbled over so many times in the beginning as I would share talk about my outline with my trusted friends from the fan fiction writing community, as I would send pre-readers copies of the drafts that I'd prepared about a quarter of the way through, halfway through, and finally I would get some feedback and comment back, which without saying too much, that point was made very clear that I had tendered a book that was not the book that they had wanted to read, was not the book that had come to their minds when I had described my story to them. And I had to everyone says that that writers need to develop thick skin, and I do think that is a salient point. I also think that writers need to establish, and was difficult for me to establish, an internal metric, an internal yardstick to develop and engage their own wisdom and discernment, to know what advice to listen to and what advice to not listen to. Because I think if I had known at the start that I was going to get all kinds of advice from all kinds of sources, and much of it was going to conflict, and much of it was going to conflict with my own vision of what I wanted to do, I think I would have been a lot less angsty through the process. So writers, take note. Just because someone doesn't like what you've done doesn't mean you've done it poorly.
Yeah, I think any creative can sort of take that to heart. Any sort of visual artist that sells their stuff that essentially sells their works, game designers, musicians, like anyone who is looking to create something that can, like, that other people can somehow consume, if I can say it like that other people can purchase from them. Like, if some people say that the stuff that you're doing isn't for them, then it's not necessarily it's an indication of that your work is bad. It's just that it's not for them. Like, and I think a lot of people.
Yes, and I think it's very difficult for creatives. At least it was for me, and I imagine there's probably a lot of people listening who are probably nodding their heads as they listen to this, and I'm with you. I hear you. That where someone says, "Well, this isn't for me." Well, that doesn't mean that what you've done is bad. They're merely making a statement of fact and not a value judgment of you or your work. And for me, especially when I began to pitch this book, and I was first pitching it in the mainstream markets, I ran afoul of this, because in this post-Twilight world in which we live now, all over the place, I saw on literary agents' websites, on publishers' submission pages, no vampires and no werewolves.
Yeah.
Don't even bother. And so I figure, well, what's my value proposition? What do I have that's different? I have werecats. That's different. Well, I came to understand the hard way that no vampires, no means no shifters of any kind. But and how did I figure that out? Well, after after dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens more rejections, no answers back, I took it to mean that this is simply not something that that this market, that these mainstream markets are looking for. Because I think that any creative needs to understand the distinction between craft and concept. I think any creative, me included, ought to study craft, ought to commit themselves to developing their craft, helping others develop their craft, learn everything about their craft. A concept is different. Concept for me was my non-negotiable. Oh, well, this would be a great book if you didn't have shifters. I wouldn't have set out to write this book but for the shifters. So no, that's not negotiable. No. And so you have to make a decision then. Are you going to write to the market, or are you going to write the story that's in your heart to write? Which I think goes back to the question you posed before about, can you do it without that emotional connection? Well, you can, but I didn't want to. Someone can write to market, but I wasn't. And if someone wants to, for the sole purpose of making a living by doing, copywriting or something like that, well, I mean, more power to them. But that's not why I set out to do what I did.
Okay, that's actually very interesting. I'm liking the answers at this point. I'm actually loving them. So, let me see. List of questions. What do you tell me? Your books, obviously they're sort of going to run 1, 2, 3. The thing is that will there ever be, when people read them, would they be able to read them out of context? So in other words, say read 3, 1, 2 first. Would that make sense? Would they be able to stand alone?
Well, one of my goals from the very beginning was to make, and I got this idea from reading all of these other resources that I told you about. I saw a consistent theme over and over again. If you got in mind to write a series, that's great, but make sure that each book can stand alone. Make sure that each book has a specific and unique beginning, middle, and end. Would the reader enjoy reading the entire series? Well, yes, they would. But make it so that a reader can feel it was money well spent if they just buy and read one book and one book only. But of course, leave hooks in there so where they would want to read next. And I think I'm putting that into practice with the book that I published, Always Gray in Winter, where it has a unique beginning, middle, and end with a setup where I'm hoping that people will feel compelled enough to be more interested in Paulie and her story, and oh geez, this just happened, and what's happening next. The next book that I'm writing right now is different in that respect. Because one of the things that I did learn as I progressed was that some people can stomach flashbacks and some people can't. There are some writers, there are some readers who are of the opinion that the only right number of flashbacks in a book is 0. And there are several places where the story is told in the form of a flashback. The present moment and the significance of the present moment is exposited in the form of a flashback. And that has been, and some people have really enjoyed that, and some people really did not. So, because I mentioned with my series outline, I've got 3 generations of Paulie's family going back to the height of the Cold War to today. there were things I wanted to talk about. There are things I needed to introduce that happened the first time Polly transformed into a werecat back in her teen years, that we see some of in the first book, several short scenes in the first book, but there was a whole lot that happened between then and the time when we see her at the beginning of the first book, where she's a mature young woman, a Navy veteran. There was a whole lot of stuff that happened from the time she first transformed into teenager up to that moment, which we see parts of throughout the first book. There's a whole lot more to that story. None of the rest of the series makes sense unless the reader's exposed to everything that happened as she was growing, this new reality, growing up as a werecat. So the second book I'm working on right now is more of a prequel than anything, where it goes back to the moment Polly transformed from another character's point of view and follows her growth throughout the rest of her high school years, where she experiences some personal tragedies of her own, to the time in which she enlists in the Navy. So I'm going backward and telling story that happened before the first book, but it's not in flashback form. It's in actual chronological form. Okay. So I think that when the time comes for all three of these books to have been released and available to the public, that there may be some who are interested in writing them or reading them in the order that they were published, and there may be some that were interested in writing them out of order in the manner in which they happen chronologically. Not unlike, say, C.S. Lewis' Chronicles of Narnia.
Okay.
Which their publication order actually looks more like the firing order on one of the diesel locomotives I used to work on. 3, 2, 5, 8, 10, 4, 6, right? It's all over the place.
Yeah. We can kind of say the same about Star Wars. Like, do you want to watch it in chronological order or like release order? Like, is there objectively something better?
Yes, because I'm old enough to remember Star Wars when it first came to the theater, and I remember looking up on the screen all 6 or 7 years old and saying, "Hey, Daddy, what's episode IV? What does that mean?" Like, well, that's episode 4. I said, "Where's the rest of them?" I said, "Shut up, watch it." and so we know where that was. But I think Lucas had a similar idea that he has a story he wanted to tell. He chose to begin in the middle of it, and that's not altogether uncommon. There's a lot of, or at least in a micro level as opposed to macro level. Another common adage I hear frequently is begin with the action. Don't begin with the exposition. Begin with the action. In media res is a thing, and that's exactly what in media res means. Begin with the action. I like to think I did that with my book. And I think that I did the same from a story perspective, that starting with this stuff that's in the middle. This is what's happening in the present day. And I suppose if I've engaged the reader enough to understand what's happening in the present day and have given them glimpses of the past of how that came to be, perhaps they'd be interested in the book that exposits all of the stuff that happened in the past to set the stage for the present.
No, fair point. It's a very, very good way to look at it. Like, yeah, if it's if the value in the first book is enough to make you go, I wonder where all this came from, then I suppose that's what's going to be drawing the readers for the next bunch of books.
Yeah. As a writer, and obviously I actually asked you this question yesterday in respect to obviously moving into the furry fandom sort of genre and everything like that. What would you choose as your mascot / avatar or spirit animal?
Well, I don't know if at any point I'm going to have an avatar. I will tell you that I'm a gray muzzle. I go way back in the fandom, and I'm talking about Stephen Galacci's Irma Filna, EDF, and Birthright, back that far. Of course, Irma Filna was always a favorite character of mine, but probably the one I love best from that time was Jenna Shoddy, who was the love interest of the main character from Birthright. And that's not terribly surprising because, as I mentioned, I'm old enough to remember when Robin Hood was in the theater. Disney's Robin Hood was in the theater. And Maid Marian was my first boyhood crush. So, and she's a Vulpix fox. And so, not surprisingly, when I got the Albedo Anthropomorphics role-playing game based on Steve Galacci's characters and started playing it, all of my characters happened to be foxes. So, would I have a fox avatar, or would I have a cat avatar? Oh, I don't know. I like them both. Like asking me, well, do you like chocolate or vanilla ice cream? I don't know. What do you got? What do you got? I'll take what you got. So, but I think that I'd probably have an avatar from one or two of those species. Just they're the ones that I enjoy. Although at that same time, being a fan of Steve Galacci's work, well, Albedo #2 is where Stan Sakai's Usagi Yojimbo premiered. So I go back a long way with the rabbit Ronin as well, and some of my favorite anthro characters even today are Lapines.
I'm gonna say this. You don't look. What's it? 1973. That's when. Yeah, you definitely don't. I'm amazed. How do you keep yourself in shape?
Well, yeah, but you see my headshot. You don't see the rest of me. I take the dog out for a walk every day and try to. Yeah, but I'm dealing with.
Huh.
Yeah,
you also haven't seen. You also see me. I'm shaved in a few days. I start. That gray muzzle is a thing. I mean, part of the reason why I like to shave it all off. So.
Man.
I don't know. I like a little pepper. I'm gonna stop talking.
Yeah, man. Sport the Asian, sport the beard. I'm all for beards.
Yeah. Viva la revolution.
Well, I don't, because I did at one time, and it just was not a great experience. Mama's got something to say about that, because she's the one that's got to look at me all the time.
Fair point.
So, Mama ain't happy thing, right? Yeah.
Understandable in that case.
I don't anticipate growing it back out any time in the near future, except might be out in the bush for a few days and come in.
You one of them hiking types or not?
Well, I used to be when I was a younger man. I'm getting more back into it now, simply because I've got a son who I want exposed to this. So yes, we go out and we do stuff. But for the most part, not as much as I used to be, because most of my hiking, most of my canoeing, most of my backpacking was before the internet, and certainly before I got this idea in my head that yes, I got to tell stories. I got writing to do. So no, that remember I said all those things that are sitting off the side waiting for me to get back. Well, they're among them.
Scratch.
Yep.
Stream dropped.
Oh, did it?
Yeah.
It seems to be back on now. Apologies for the drop on
seems back on.
furry.fm side. Don't know what happened there.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're getting fiber in the complex soon, so hopefully that can help alleviate this.
Yeah. Cool. Sorry, just
some technical issues, third world internet and all that jazz.
Carry on.
No, I'd finished what I was saying anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I actually want to go back to a point if you didn't have another follow-up question, Ivik.
No, go straight for it.
Has Twilight really muddled the waters that much for anyone doing, something in the Where X category, like even if it's something completely non-related to young adult romance kind of thing? Is it that bad now?
Well, yes and no.
Okay.
I suppose it depends upon the book that someone has in their heart to write.
Yeah.
Because with in the post-Twilight world that we live in, everybody says no vampires, no werewolves, except the publishers of paranormal romance. And I know several of them that are acquiring paranormal romance books now, and actually very happy to have shifters. In fact, one of the books that I used as a comp when I was pitching my book, querying my book, was Cheryl Nantis's Blood of the Pride series, which is out from Carina Press. And it's 4 books, and the only criticism I have of it is there's a whole lot of plot threads that are left dangling in the wind at the end of those 4 books that I would really, really, really like to read. So I enjoyed the 4 books of the series a great deal, and I know several other folks that I've introduced them to did also, and that's still a going concern. So if that's the book that someone has in their heart to write, well, more power to you. But there seemed to be the conventional wisdom of mainstream publishing was that shifters are consigned or relegated to paranormal romance, and that's the only it boggled my mind that could be the only possible application for them, because that's not the story that I wrote. I wrote a paranormal thriller, which just happens to feature characters about claws and fangs, and so I do believe that one of the most helpful things for me, having come across the Furry Writers Guild, like at the very beginning of this process, was that, oh, look, there are markets out there that are interested in serving the furry community, and while my book may be very different than a number of the books in their catalog, it may be something that there may be audience within the furry community, which, frankly, I've been a member of for a long time and am glad to be part of, that they would find interesting. And that's, in fact, it was via the Furry Writers Guild markets page that I first got the idea to query my publisher, Thurston Howell Publications. And well, we know the rest of the story.
Okay.
Well, I think within the furry markets, there's still place for shifters. I think the horror markets like them too.
But then again, I mean, you don't write to, I guess, either of those genres, that being the romance or the what's the word, horror
genre,
genres.
No, I don't. And there may be. And I was advised by many people, this is just not a book that the markets are interested in. Trunk it, shelve it. I'm like, no. That's not why I set out to do what I'm There's got to be an audience out there. The only question is, are you as an agent, are you as a publisher going to help me find that audience, or aren't you?
Yeah. Well, that's a fair way to look at it, I guess. We're coming down to about 10 minutes left of the interview. I do have one question for you that might be interesting. Do you have any hidden bits in your novel that only a few readers would be able to find?
Hidden bits, you mean like Easter eggs almost, or?
Let me try to rephrase that question. Do you hide any secrets in your book that only a few people would be able to find?
Well, there are in-jokes. There are people who know me and know what I'm about, who have read through my book and have said to me, "Oh, I remember that. Yeah, I know where you lifted that idea from, or I knew where it's almost it's a joy for me when people that I know from the other fandoms and from parts of my past come to me and say, yes, I know where I know what your inspiration for that would have been. And I'm always glad for people to present them to me. They can connect with me on Twitter. They can connect with me, sign up for my mailing list on my website, or send me a note via my website. And I'm always glad to interact with them. I expect that some people are going to get it wrong, but there's going to be a few people who are going to be like, yep, great minds alike, right? Plagiarize the same sources, right? So.
Speaking of, I mean, and this is probably a point that I always like asking writers. When it comes to the idea of plagiarism, and I put this into quotation marks, it was said round about in the early 1900s that there is no more originality in writing. It's pretty much everything that everything that has been written is genuinely sort of a copy in some way of something else. How much do you ascribe to that?
I think they were saying that back in the days of Plato. I mean, this is not a original concept. This is I'm saying that
ironically,
that thought that you're describing, that there is nothing new under the sun. I mean, this has been going on for millennia. And I think that it's nothing new. I do not think that it's something that ought to scare someone or intimidate someone into not writing. Because even though all of these stories have been told, and even though many stories are an amalgamation of this trope and that trope and these others, I think what a writer brings to the table, what I tried to embody in my book and will be doing in the future books, is taking all of these familiar tropes and putting them together in a way that no one's done quite like that before. And I think that is an ability that any writer has, because any writer is looking at it from a perspective that's unique, because no one else is looking out at the world from behind their eyes. They view the world differently. They've experienced the world differently. They have different relationships. They have different experiences. They have different backgrounds. They have different worldviews. And I think that by taking the familiar in the form of these tropes and putting them together with their spin on it, I think is a way that a writer can deal with it. I think it's a way a writer should
deal with it. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, because tropes are just sort of shorthand for things that sort of, I wouldn't say have been established before, but like ideas that exist for reasons, because it's like it's stuff that people can get behind. It's ideas that people can identify with like immediately. So yeah, like using those tropes isn't a cop-out in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
No, it's not. And I want to make a very clear distinction. And I've actually stumbled across some writers who do a very good job of this, who make very clear tropes are not necessarily cliche.
Yeah.
Tropes can become cliche, but tropes in and of themselves are not intrinsically bad or lazy like cliches can be.
Yeah.
We ought to endeavor to avoid cliches and find them in our writing, and this is part of the reason why I have pre-readers come to me and say, "Oh, come on, really, dude, come on," and it's part of the reason why I depend upon them. But just because something is familiar doesn't mean it's bad. When you go into a restaurant, I always like to try something new, but sometimes it's like, you know what? I want a little bit of the familiar. Bring me the meat, right? You know, why? Comfort food. I know what that is. I know what it's all about. Bring me a hamburger, right? Because it's just what, and I think that is something that a writer can use to not be intimidated by the idea, well, what do I got unique? What do I got to write? All these stories have been written, and what value do I add? What can I bring? That's a very good question. I think one that they should give some serious consideration to, but I hope it doesn't discourage them from writing in the first place.
All right.
Very poignant answer.
That's very, yes. Well, we're running into about 3 minutes left. So if anything, final thoughts and, do your plug if you'd like to.
Okay, thank you. Well, I want to thank you guys for having me. I want to thank all your listeners. I'm looking forward to meeting a bunch of you. My website will be posted online here. It's Mark, M-A-R-K -Engels, ENGELS.com. All my social media links are there, and I'd love to hear from, I'm most active on Twitter. Anyone who wants to send me a note via my website is welcome to do so, or join my mailing list and get all the details about where I'll be appearing online and in person, and what's going on with my upcoming books, and some artwork promotions that I have coming up. And I'm really glad to meet all of you because I'm one of you. I've been part of the community for a long time, and I think that this book and the books to come are a way for me to give back to the community that I've made a lot of good friends from, and I've had so much enjoyment from the things that they've created. After consuming content for so long, I'm glad to create it and glad to give back to the community that had given me so much.
Awesome.
Okay. That's actually pretty awesome. I can't believe it. Mog. Okay, never mind. I know who Mog is now. Dang, sorry.
Yes, I saw you popped up on, hey, Mog, how are you? Keeping between the white lines, driver.
No ways. I'm sorry. I remember seeing pictures of Moogle for like years and years and years, actually. Also, Mog says that your persona is a falcon. You need to make that happen.
No, I think Fred Patton did that a whole lot better than that I did, or whatever that bird was, that avian that is spread on your show.
Well, I mean, falcons are falcons. Mog says, good to hear you. Okay. Well, you know what? Thank you very much for being on the podcast with us this evening. We really, really appreciate all of your thoughts on the writing community and how you got there. Once again, you don't sound or look at all like the age that I've sort of gauged you at currently, so that's amazing. I'm saying that as a compliment, hopefully.
Oh, sure, but I don't think I'll be carded walking into any bars anytime in the near future.
Less so if you have that beard still.
Yeah, get that beard, man.
Get that beard.
Get it.
Nah, my skin just all breaks out underneath. Oh, it's bad. It's just not comfortable in my skin to grow a beard out. I tried. I had it for several years in college, and
beard and long hair. And
I did. I grew out my hair up my shoulders. I looked like I had tied it into the rubber band stuck out behind my head like a pot handle. I was like, nah, not a good look. Nah.
All right, but thank you very much. We really appreciate having you on. And for those of you who are listening, obviously we've sent a couple of links to the live chat. For those of you guys who have missed some of it or want to re-listen to this will go onto YouTube as soon as we've uploaded it.
Yep.
With the links that we have provided. Scratch, I have sent the links to the Skype channel, so they should be there.
Yep, I see them.
You can just So those will be available on the podcast itself when it goes onto YouTube. And yeah, thank you very much again, Mark, for joining us. We really, really appreciate having you here. And we hope to, see you soon. I hear that your book is in paperback only currently.
It is for the moment. My publisher, Thurston Howell, and I are discussing when the ebook will be released. They're implementing ebooks for the entire THP catalog right now, and I just don't know. Jonathan hasn't told me when my turn's coming for my. I will be sending a note out to my followers on my email list, my Twitter followers, on Facebook as well, so that everybody will know.
Sweet.
Available in ebook form.
Cool. Okay, that's great because obviously we've spoken about South African postal service, and the odds are that we probably.
No, Jaco is anxiously waiting because I'm with you, brother. I'm working with Howell to get it done.
Good stuff. So we'll definitely be able to get that our side as well.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Well, again, thank you very much. Those of you who are listening, please do stick around. We're going to be doing the music stream directly after this, probably within the next 5 to 10 minutes. Advolf is sobbing, apparently. I am sorry.
Maybe he wants the book.
Because you reminded him of his book shipment that's somewhere in, I don't know, between Joburg and Cape Town.
Odds are it's actually probably between Denmark and nowhere else. It's an Oman, I swear.
It's a roundabout way to get to the Cape. Gee whiz.
Where in the world is that goddamn shipment?
Fair enough. Hashtag postal service. Okay, we'll definitely. So yeah, we'll see you guys again next week. Yeah, thank you again. I'm going to continue thanking you until this stops.
Okay, bye.
Yeah,
so, thank you for having
me. Cheers, guys, on that bombshell.
Yeah, thanks again, Mark. We'll see you guys again next week.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Great meeting you. Thank you very much.
Cool. Cheers.
Cheers.